What if the most powerful civilization in human history didn't fall? It just stopped. No final battle, no burning capital, no last emperor dying on a sword. Just a quiet afternoon in a stone hall in Ravenna. A teenage boy, hands over a crown. And that was it. 1,200 years of Rome. Gone. Not with a bang, with a silence. Now imagine this moment. A cold room, stone walls, the faint echo of footsteps on marble. No shouting, no panic, no sense of urgency. Outside, life continues. Markets are open. Merchants negotiate prices. Children run through the streets. Nothing feels different. But inside that room, something has already ended, and no one fully understands it yet. Here is something no history teacher ever told you. In the year 100 AD, Rome maintained over 80,000 kilometers of road. Think about that. A network so vast, it connected an entire civilization. Merchants moving goods across continents. Soldiers receiving orders across thousands of kilometers. Messages traveling faster than ever before in human history. Everything connected, everything coordinated, everything working. Now imagine that system. A map of the empire, lines stretching across Europe, North Africa, the Middle East. Movement, flow, communication, decisions. A living system. Now, watch closely. Year after year, those lines begin to slow, not visibly, not dramatically, but slowly. Trade routes become less reliable. Messages take longer. Supplies arrive later. Until one day, they stop expanding. In the year 450 AD, not a single new kilometer of road was built. Not because they forgot how. Not because the engineers were gone, but because no one in the entire empire could give the order anymore. Think about that. The knowledge was still there. The workers were still there. The tools were still there. But the system had already stopped functioning, decades before anyone noticed. This is what collapse actually looks like. Not destruction. Dysfunction. A system so overloaded that decisions stop being made. Not because of one emperor. Not because of one invasion. Not because of one bad year. But because of thousands of small failures, accumulating in silence. Now imagine trying to control an empire, 3 million square kilometers in size. A message sent from the eastern border takes 40 days to reach the capital. 40 days. In a world where everything can change, in a single afternoon, generals are making decisions that emperors won't hear about for 6 weeks. Governors are managing entire regions without oversight. Tax systems begin to lag. Supplies become inconsistent. Military coordination weakens. The system is running, but no one is steering it. And this is the moment everything changes. Because when a system loses the ability to decide, it loses the ability to survive. And into that moment walks a man named Odoacer. Not a genius, not a legendary conqueror, just someone who sees what others don't. Rome is no longer making decisions, and a system that cannot decide, cannot defend itself. So in 476 AD, he doesn't attack Rome. He does something far more dangerous. He stops pretending that it still exists. He walks into Ravenna. No resistance, no final stand. He removes Romulus Augustulus from the throne, a boy sitting in a position that no longer has power. Then he does something unexpected. He sends the imperial crown to Constantinople, a symbolic act, a message to the world. The West no longer needs an emperor. No speech, no declaration, no dramatic ending. Because there is nothing left to defend. Now stop. Because this is where history becomes something else. Imagine someone watching all of this. Not a general, not a politician. Something else. Something that can see everything at once. A map. Numbers moving. Trade slowing down. Decisions taking longer. Messages delayed. Borders weakening. Patterns forming. Because here is the truth that changes everything. The signals were always there. The system was speaking, and no one was listening. The roads slowing in 380 AD. Political decisions stalling in 410 AD. Military fragmentation accelerating in 450 AD. Every warning visible years before the collapse. The Romans had the data. They just didn't have the lens. And this is where everything changes. Because this is what artificial intelligence does. It doesn't rewrite history. It reveals the patterns inside it. An AI would not see chaos. It would see structure. It would track thousands of variables at once. Economic output, military response times, political decision delays, infrastructure maintenance, all connected, all interacting. And within that system, it would detect something critical, a threshold, a tipping point, a moment where the system crosses a line from stable to fragile. Not 476, much earlier. Historians now believe the real breaking point was around 395 AD, the moment the empire split into East and West, not just politically, but structurally, because the system had become too large, too complex, to control from a single center. And once that happens, something irreversible begins. The system doesn't collapse immediately. It continues. It functions. It looks stable. But underneath, it has already failed. And from that moment on, every crisis, every conflict, every decision doesn't test the system. It exposes it. The fall of Rome was not a surprise. It was a delayed realization of something that had already happened. But here is the part no one talks about. Rome did not disappear. It transformed. The Eastern Empire continued for nearly another 1,000 years. The same laws, the same structures, the same system, in a different form, which means something powerful. Collapse is not always the end. Sometimes it is a transformation, a system under pressure, reorganizing itself, letting go of what it can no longer sustain, and becoming something new. Now think about this. We live in systems more complex than anything Rome ever built. Global supply chains, financial networks, digital infrastructure, energy systems, all connected, all interdependent, all producing data, and all showing patterns. Some of them already showing signals, slower responses, rising complexity, increasing fragility. So here is the real question. Are we watching those patterns? Or are we doing exactly what Rome did? Seeing the signals and waiting for someone else to act? Because Rome didn't fall in 476. It stopped functioning decades earlier. And the date was just the moment when everyone finally noticed. Welcome to History AI, a place where we don't just study history. We decode it, we analyze it, we understand it as a system, because for the first time in human history, we can do something no civilization before us could. We can see collapse before it happens. We can identify patterns hidden beneath events, and maybe For the first time ever, we can ask a question no one before us could answer. So, what do you think? Can a system be saved once it crosses that line? Or is collapse simply inevitable? Because if Rome's fall followed a pattern, then something even more important becomes possible. Prediction. And if we can predict collapse, could we have prevented it? Could something like artificial intelligence have changed the outcome? Could Rome have been saved? That is exactly what we explore in the next video.